Hello, so welcome to part 18 of toxin sequestration theory. This is my new theory for why the body creates extra tissue. I used to call this my new theory of cancer, but now this theory covers not just cancer, but also obesity and fat tissue. And now, as I'll talk about in this video, it also covers skin growths as well. And when you have a theory that is powerful, then you should be able to cover more and more phenomena. So just as Isaac Newton came up with his theory of gravity and it explained why apples fell from trees, it also explained why the moon orbited the earth and the planets orbited the sun. And it also explained other things. There's basically a long list of phenomena that he was able to unify under one umbrella. And so I'm very excited that my theory, which was initially designed just as a theory of cancer, I did not have obesity or skin growths in mind when I developed my theory. But now, as I look further and further into things, it turns out that my theory, called toxin sequestration theory, is relevant to obesity and skin growths because both of those correspond to toxin sequestration. When you look at some of the other theories of cancer, like the mainstream theory, which is the selfish genetic theory, that theory doesn't explain obesity, and that theory doesn't explain skin growths. The same could be said for the so-called metabolic theory of cancer, and other theories of cancer as well. So it's really not just about cancer. It's really about why does the body create extra tissue? And anytime the body does something, it's for a reason. The body is amazing, it's brilliant, it's strategic. It's not going to waste all the wonderful beef that you ate for no reason. So when you eat good, nourishing food, the body's like, well, I'm going to be very strategic about this nutrition and what I use it for. And some of it will be used to build extra tissue, and it's doing that for a reason. So in any case, I want to talk today about skin growths. These are things like pimples, lipomas, cherry angiomas, and skin tags. And I want to talk about how they fit nicely into toxin sequestration theory. I've already talked a little bit I've hinted at how skin growths might be related to my theory because in the case of nickel, for example, I talked about nickel allergy. Now, nickel allergy is where if someone gets nickel on their skin from, say, cheap jewelry or like a cheap watch, they can get these little bumps, these red bumps on their skin. People call that nickel allergy. It's a misnomer. It's not really an allergy. What it is a little mini nickel vault where the body says, well, I can't let this nickel get into my vital organs, so I'm going to sequester it here at the surface, at the skin, in these little bumps. And so it's a way to sequester nickel before it gets in to harm the rest of the body. So that's a hint that, maybe the body does these little skin bumps to sequester toxins. That raises all sorts of interesting questions about other kinds of skin bumps and skin growths. Are they used by the body to sequester toxins? And that's what we'll get to today. I also wanted to mention that I think of things hierarchically. So basically there's a hierarchy of the body trying to sequester toxins more and more aggressively as the toxic load gets worse and worse. And so we talked about how fat tissue is kind of like the first resort. That's like, well, if the body's exposed, especially if it's exposed to lipophilic toxins, things like seed oils, heavy metals, other kinds of toxic metals like copper, as well as the forever chemicals and the microplastics. And there's some other lipophilic toxins like xenoestrogens, BPA. Whenever the body encounters those lipophilic toxins, then it creates fat tissue as the first resort. That's kind of like its first strategy. It can also store some of these toxins in the liver as well. And then when that doesn't work, as I will say, it escalates to tier 2. Tier 2 is what I'm going to talk about now, which are the skin mini vaults, which are the pimples, the lipomas, the cherry angiomas, and the skin tags. And then when that doesn't work, when that fails, it can escalate to tier 3, which is a cancer tumor. That's obviously a more extreme situation where you have even more toxic load. And then when that doesn't work, it can escalate to tier 4, which is metastasis, where you have multiple vaults, multiple tumor vaults, and even cachexia, where you have muscle wasting. Those are the late stage issues. And so I basically have it set up in these 4 tiers. Now, I want to clarify that different people's bodies respond differently. Some people skip straight to tier 2 because some people's bodies are not good at creating fat tissue. Some people's bodies are very efficient at what's called de novo lipogenesis, which is the creation of fat tissue. And those people will just do tier 1 initially and they'll grow fat. But there's other people who are naturally lean and their bodies are not good at creating fat tissue. And those people may just skip the whole obesity step and go straight to the skin vaults and get things like acne, lipomas, skin tags, cherry angiomas, and that. So it is true that there are lean people who get these skin issues. And similarly, there are lean people who even get cancer tumors, which is tier 3. So I don't want to make it seem like the body always goes in order, and like it always just, first you get obesity and then you get skin tags and then you get cancer tumors. It doesn't always go in that order. So this is kind of a rough idea. But sometimes it does go in order in that way. And, it just gives you a rough sense of like what strategies are more and more aggressive. And so anyway, we're going to talk about, so that's like my hierarchy, right? So I have this hierarchy view. And, I think what is beautiful about this view is that it creates one umbrella to discuss all these different phenomena. So we can discuss obesity as well as visceral fat, fatty liver, in the same breath that we talk about skin tags and pimples and lipomas. And in the same breath, we can talk about cancer tumors. And we can just say, well, they're just kind of like different ways of storing toxins. And they come in different shapes and different sizes. Some are big, some are small, some are round and some are, shaped in funny ways. But nevertheless, they're all serving the same purpose to sequester toxins and to protect the vital organs, because ultimately the body cares about one thing, and that is protecting its vital organs. That's the most important thing that it cares about. And when you think of why does the body choose to do skin growths, well, what better place is there to sequester toxins than the skin? And I mentioned this in my skin cancer video, which is that the most common cancer in the world is skin cancer. Skin cancer is more common than any other type of cancer. And there's a reason for that. It's the best place to build a tumor vault. And that's because it's the most peripheral tissue. It is the farthest away from the vital organs, right? And it's also the frontline defense against toxins, right? It's like the interface with the outside world. And so it's sort of the battle lines. It's the battle lines with the rest of the world. And so it's the perfect place to put a toxin storage vault because it prevents the toxins from penetrating further into your body. And it also conversely allows you to potentially excrete toxins out of the skin, like in the case of pimples. Like when you pop a pimple, as I will get into, that's basically like excreting toxins out of your body, getting the toxins out. So since I just mentioned pimples, let me just get into that. So what is a pimple? Now there's the mainstream view on what a pimple is, right? And I'm going to disagree with the mainstream view. But the mainstream view is that pimples are connected to, they give 3 things: clogged pores, bacterial overgrowth, and hormonal imbalance. Those are the three things that they often say. And then sometimes they'll say things like excess oil. Now, I'm going to give a completely different view, and I'm going to say that pimples are in a small storage vault for lipophilic toxins. In particular, the toxins that pimples tend to store, number one would be seed oils, as well as the forever chemicals, the heavy metals, the other toxic metals, and the microplastics. So the usual lipophilic toxins that we've discussed. And so pimples are just basically these little concentrated toxin storage units. And, this also suggests that conventional acne treatments are really missing the mark on pimples. And because those conventional treatments focus on killing bacteria with antibiotics and antibacterial wipes. I remember when I was a teenager, I was told that I should wipe my face with these antibacterial wipes. I remember it being painful and it hurting. I don't think my body liked it very much. And it never helped, by the way. So, so that's what they do. Basically, they give you these treatments that kill bacteria and dry out your skin. And they typically don't really work that well. And but what my theory is saying, TST is saying, is that the right way to treat pimples is to allow them to run their course. They are, of course, just the body trying to concentrate and sequester the toxins into a small region of space. And then you can ask, like, should you actually pop a pimple? And in principle, whenever the job is done, like whenever the body is done, sort of like bringing that pimple to a head, like a white head, then at that point you can pop it. But it's only recommended after that has occurred. So you don't want to interrupt the body while it's forming the pimple, right? Sometimes people will try to pop a pimple too early in the process. And then the body's not ready and you end up kind of spreading the toxins around and you damage the tissue. That's not what the body wants. The body doesn't want you to interrupt it. Like, let the body run its course, make the pimple, develop a head, and then at that point you can release the contents and get rid of it, wipe it away. So that's kind of the way to deal with it. But the bigger way to deal with it is to reduce your toxic load, right? Do not eat seed oils. Try to reduce your exposure to microplastics and forever chemicals, and of course, reduce your exposure to the toxic metals. And when you do that, you should see less and less pimples and acne. And sure enough, that is what people see in practice. So when you poll people who go on a carnivore diet, like they cut out seed oils out of their diet, they cut out the toxic metals, then they typically see their acne clearing up. I've seen many, many stories of people saying this. I remember, for example, Steak and Butter Gal talking about how her acne cleared up when she went on a carnivore diet. Many people say this, that these sort of pimples just go away when you go on a low toxin diet, because now your body doesn't need to sequester these toxins in your skin. So that's the basic idea of acne and pimples. And then we can move on to cherry angiomas. So these are sort of like, they look like red blood vessel, kind of circular shaped little round red things. And they are also can be viewed as toxin storage vaults. They store, once again, the seed oils, the forever chemicals, and they also store a lot of estrogenic compounds. So they store excess estrogen. So many people will have excess estrogen in their body. The number one source of excess estrogen is obesity. The number two source is exogenous hormones. Also the cherry angiomas store the xenoestrogens as well. So these are things like BPA and phthalates. These are the kind of chemicals found in plastics. So those are all stored inside the cherry angiomas. You can view them as the body's localized vascular vaults for isolating, the compounds that I just mentioned. And and it is well known that cherry angiomas often increase in number as the toxic load rises, especially when people are on diets that are high in seed oils or processed food, as well as when people have higher body fat. So when you have higher body fat, you would tend to produce more estrogen. And so they're not just like random skin blemishes. They are literally storing toxins in these little vascular mini vaults. And, it should be clear that, if you are getting a lot of pimples and cherry angiomas, that should be a warning sign to you that you are exposing your body to toxicity. In many ways, you could say that, almost like people overestimate the danger of cancer and underestimate the danger of these skin vaults, because, everyone is extremely scared of cancer, but no one's scared of things like skin tags or pimples or acne, right? But these skin vaults are a sign that you are toxic. They're a sign that your body has toxins inside of it, and they should be viewed as a warning sign. So in that sense, I believe people should take the skin vaults as a warning sign and take it seriously that you are exposing your body to too many toxins. So let's move on to skin tags. Skin tags are these little kind of flaps. They look like little fingers, and they're fibro-fatty mini vaults, kind of like fibrous tissue, and they're flesh-colored, and they often appear in areas of friction like the neck, the armpits, the groin, or the eyelids, and most people just see them as like little cosmetic quirks with no real meaning. But in my theory, TST, they are localized mini vaults. They're small little outgrowths with skin tissue that has a core of fat cells. And that makes them, once again, perfect for storing these lipophilic, fat-soluble toxins. So it's the same culprits, and it's going to be, the usual seed oils and the forever chemicals, the xenoestrogens, so the BPA and the phthalates. But also, it's worth noting that glucotoxicity, so toxicity from sugars like glucose and fructose, can add to the oxidative stress in the skin and also drive some of these skin growths as well. When people think of skin tags, a lot of people have connected them to like things like diabetes. And of course, diabetes is a case where you have high blood sugar. So that can, of course, add to the oxidative stress in the skin and contribute to these skin tags as well. And, in my theory, a lot of people like to focus on insulin resistance, but I really don't like the phrasing, because in my theory, insulin resistance is a protective strategy against glucotoxicity. The real culprit is glucotoxicity, the toxicity of sugars. If sugar's a toxin, then the body will try to sequester these toxins, and that's what cancer tumors do, and some of these skin growths can try to do as well. So anyway, so skin tags, it's well known that they increase in number whenever the internal toxic load rises, especially when you have both glucotoxicity and the lipophilic toxins. So that's another example. Finally, the last example that I'll discuss are lipomas. Now, personally, I'll just mention that I do have a lipoma myself. I've had it for about 6 years. Before I got on the carnivore diet or keto diet, I've had this because I was eating the standard American diet. And, I was even offered surgery by a doctor. The doctor said, "Oh yeah, we can remove that for you, no problem." But I was a little bit nervous, and so I didn't do surgery. I never knew what the heck it was. And, I had a doctor check it, and the doctor was like, oh, don't worry, that's not cancer. It's just like some fatty tissue. But why does it happen? What is the purpose of a lipoma? And now that I have my toxin sequestration theory, I finally know what a lipoma is for. It's to store seed oils, and it's to store forever chemicals and microplastics and the BPA and the phthalates and it's to store the heavy metals and the excess copper. It's to store all the lipophilic toxins. So it's just like like a ball of fat, or like kind of like soft fat, that stores all these lipophilic toxins and sequesters it away from your healthy tissue, from your normal tissue. So it protects your normal tissue from these lipophilic toxins. And and they are in the skin, so they're like fully sequestered and encapsulated. In that sense, you don't really have to worry too much about like things spilling out, because it's well encapsulated and enclosed. And these lipomas can be with you for the long term. Basically, they don't release the toxins back into circulation, right? Unless you have some kind of injury. These lipomas are just basically fully encapsulated, and you can literally live the rest of your life with a lipoma and not do anything about it. You don't have to get surgery. And in fact, surgery does come with risk, right? Because if someone does try to surgically remove your lipoma, they could burst the encapsulation and then release the toxins into your body and damage your organs that way. So you have to be careful about getting surgery, because it can release the toxins stored in the lipoma. Of course, there are situations where you might want to consider surgery, like if the lipoma is very painful or mechanically interfering with your movement or something. But, and so you can weigh those options, but just beware that if you do get it surgically removed, there are risks. And, and really the appropriate strategy, in my theory, is to lower the toxic load so that it doesn't grow further. Like, namely, you want to lower your seed oils and all those lipophilic toxins that I mentioned. And then it should stop growing. Now, in my case, the lipoma has stopped growing. It hasn't gotten any bigger since I've gotten on carnivore, but it hasn't gone away. So that's interesting that the lipoma did not go away just by switching to carnivore. But that's fine. Maybe it's just that the body is satisfied just keeping those toxins nicely stored up in the lipoma, and it's not really going to mess with it. So it's just going to probably just leave it there. Okay, so that's the last of the skin vaults that I wanted to discuss. I think it's very interesting, like I said, that these skin mini vaults fit into my theory. Just to recap again, you have tier 1, which is the body creates fat tissue and visceral fat to store toxins, and then tier 2 are these mini vaults that I was just talking about today. And then tier 3 is cancer tumors, and then tier 4 is metastasis cachexia. That's basically TST in a nutshell. And as the toxic load rises and gets more serious, then your body goes up and up in these tiers with more aggressive measures. But hopefully this gives people a deeper appreciation for why things like skin growths happen in the first place. They're not random and they're not accidental. They are part of the toxin sequestration strategy. So if you do see a skin tag or a lipoma on your body, or acne or pimples, you should think to yourself, what toxins am I being exposed to? And how can I reduce my toxins so that I don't get more of these skin growths? So it is a useful warning sign to take note of. All right, thanks everyone for listening. I'm very excited about this kind of unification of multiple phenomena under one umbrella. Let me know your thoughts. Thanks.